Alright, so approval of the agenda. Thoughts? Didn't get any emails. Alright. So unanimous consent, 3.
Oh, wait 1 second.
Oh, what's that?
Special sessions isn't happening.
Okay. That's what I said too. It's not appropriate.
It's very
Okay. I thought it was my eyes.
You don't mind if I don't adjust them? That's just like an 8-minute shit.
It's fine.
Depending.
What? Oh, we should say it.
Okay, so depending on how the confirmations for election board go tonight, I actually might quickly write a piece of joint legislation that amends all the other past joint legislation to include the right stipend amount, so we can get those folks on payroll as soon as we can, because they don't have a stipend number. So, no. So depending on how the confirmations go tonight, I might write quick legislation, and we just might, make
Is everybody okay if Colin just writes that now and we can just send it in for the 8 minutes?
the legislation would literally be, so we have 6 members on election board, and there's a $1,000 pie. Whatever 1,000 divided by 6 is, that's their stipend, and it needs to be reflected in everyone's piece of legislation. So that's the only thing in the new joint legislation.
Can I see thumbs up if that's okay? Great. So Colin, you can write it. Great. Can you add that into Colin, will it be ready? Will it be ready after the confirmations?
Yeah.
Okay. So JL 12.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Alright, so did everybody look at the minutes?
Yeah, I made some changes.
Alright, thank you. Awesome. So, we have visitors coming up. Nice to have you. So, we're going to go around the room and just do introductions so you know who you can introduce yourself to. So, if you want to say your name, your pronouns, and a position if you want to disclose. I'm Lily, I'm the speaker of the Senate, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Carly, I'm the SGA treasurer, I use she, her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Colin, I'm the SGA president.
Candace Martinez, I say my she, her pronouns. I'm Linda, the executive vice president, I use she, her pronouns. I'm Yasmin, I'm the senator, I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Rashad, I'm first year. I'll keep you.
I'm Malloy, first year master, she, her.
Erin Babalos, I'm going first.
SGA senator, she, her.
Robbie Kava, I'm the secretary, she, her.
I'm Gordon Trotman, I'm a senator of Pecan. Van Kemp, senator. Reese, first year ambassador of Pecan. Jared Richard, senator.
Patrick Reed, Shea Senator of Pecan.
Pecan, finance representative of Pecan. Bringing down
I'm Karen from Facilities Management in Eden. And as you can see, Julianne Simpson isn't here to talk tonight, so I come in her place. And we're going to talk for a few minutes about the University Health Services and Counseling Center and what we've been looking at for options to possibly relocate them for the future here. So let me just shift over real quick. This presentation isn't really very long, so we'll go through it real quick and let me just get it. That's not going to be up there, Laura.
Is it not there?
Excuse me while I learn how to use my laptop. Okay, for some reason we're still getting something showing up there. Not sure why that's showing up. I don't have it on my screen. That's just it.
God,
I think you have to, it's like 2 monitors, so you have to like try to move the mouse over onto the screen, like up here, like pretend
Yeah, there you
that's
go.
the monitor.
Yay. Awesome.
All right, look at that. I learned something new. Okay, so as you all know, originally the University Health Services and Counseling Center were planned to be relocated into the RAC, and they were going to be kind of co-located in that vicinity. That decision has been revisited with a whole lot of looking at maybe better locations for them on the campus. And so in planning, when we got the guidance to go ahead and look and develop other options to relocate them, one of the things we looked at was one, a strategic plan. And so promote the health and well-being of students as a foundation for academic success. This fits right in with that. The charge was to find solutions that integrate and elevate university health services and counseling center. And the planning criteria was a number of things. Move counseling and student conduct, community standards, and interfaith center out of SDSC. So, as you all know, the old SDSC trailers, they're not in the best shape. They are struggle to maintain. And so one of the things we looked at was how can we accomplish this move and also accomplish this at the same time. Co-locate health services and counseling. That's kind of the main driver, is to get both of those together. Provide convenient access to counseling and the university health services. We want it to be in a location that's convenient for commuters as well as students on the campus. Locate counseling and health near, but not necessarily within a residential facility. Provide clean and functional space for all units. Provide sufficient space to meet current and future needs. We want to be able to align with enrollment growth better than we're able to now. And communicate symbolically the importance of health and well-being. In other words, have a building that's appropriate for that kind of service functionally, but also have to be aesthetically something that kind of celebrates what they do. Offer solutions that are fiscally responsible, and this is the big one here. We've got to be able to afford the building. And depending on how we do that, we're looking to get a 20 to 50-year building. Most of the buildings on campus are built to a 50-year plus standard of construction. That's a little bit more expensive type of building. There's other options for buildings out there, which we'll get into a little bit here. Amount of square footage that we're looking at. So what you can see up here is the folks currently in the SDSC trailers as well as University Health Services, what their current square footage is, what we're looking at for the square footage. Now, it says assumed with an asterisk. That just means that what was being programmed for their use in the rack, if they were co-located, is kind of the basis for that number. What we need to have currently, so the assumed net square footage they need is about 13,000. This would translate into about a 24,000 square foot building. The difference there is the net square footage on the left tab, or the left table there. That's usable square footage in the building. In order to get that much usable square footage, you have to plan for a higher number of gross square footage, which includes common area spaces like closets and hallways and mechanical space and things like that. So that's how we get to the need for about a 24,000 square foot building. So one of the areas we're looking at is, so let me step back one second. We looked at a number of options. Some of them were in residential facilities, some of them were in brand new buildings. What we boiled this down to show you here is really kind of the culmination of that review that happened of those different options to the most feasible option that could actually be accomplished in some sort of near time frame. On the site of the current trailers is a location. If the trailers were removed and demoed, then this facility could be built. We could fit a 24,000 square foot building right there. It could be an all new building. It could be housing University Health Services, had counseling, and all 4 units that are currently in the SDSC trailers. It would all fit in that building at that location. Locations for new buildings on campus are somewhat limited, and when you look against the master plan, there's already future buildings way out there that eliminate some areas from being used. So the other thing about this site is we could expedite construction there by doing something more modular. That doesn't mean mobile home like, not the trailers that are there. Modular construction is an actual building. It's just built in modules that are then transported on site and assembled together on site instead of a normal stick construction, which happens all just on site. The advantage to that is you can save anywhere from 20 to 30% in your construction timeline, because while the site work is being done to prep for that construction, the modules can be getting built somewhere else, and then they get trucked in and assembled on site. The design window doesn't change, because all the design still has to happen in order to get the facility laid out in a manner that works well. But after looking at various scenarios, this looked like an option that would meet the need for square footage, meet all the criteria that I showed on the earlier slide, and also be a type of construction that could possibly be done faster than a normal construction. The building features, it would roughly be a single-story building. A cost is something that $3. Yeah, we aren't quoting cost because, quite frankly, we don't typically do this type of construction. However, there are others that do that we've conferred with. This could be a cheaper option than building a normal construction type building. You really get your savings based on the fact that the construction timeline can be reduced. So that's really provides a lot of the savings for this. Now, take note of that bottom one. Most optimistic schedule is summer of 2021 completion. That hinges on lots of things. So I just do want to make clear that, one, funding would have to be identified. And there's a few challenges to this. Let me just go through the advantages and disadvantages. So this could require less funding than a normal building construction type. Relatively fast delivery. I know somewhere 2021 doesn't sound fast, but for normal construction, a building of this same size would push into 2022 because of the design and construction timeline. That's just what it takes to build a building like this. It gets rid of the trailers, which I'm hugely in favor of because they're difficult and they're past their useful life. Within a residential zone of campus, so it's located in an area that we think is convenient for the residential areas, and also it isn't far for any community students to get to either. It frees up space in Erickson Hall. The challenges for this are it requires a significant amount of capital funding. Even though this may be less than a normal building, it's still going to require several $1 million to build. I'm not going to throw an exact number out because we aren't at that stage of the planning for this yet. The design can create a buffer between new buildings and Susquehanna Hall. It would require location of the SDSC tenants. So that means they have to be moved out while we demo the trailers and then start building. So where do those tenants currently in the trailers go? That's something they would have to figure out. Not something impossible to do. If you think about it, when we do big building renovations, we have to go through this process anyway. Normally you relocate the tenants in one building out, do the renovation, move them back in. This would be the same sort of thing. So for a period of time, whenever demolition started all the way till the construction is complete, they would have to relocate to some other place before they could come back to the building. Another challenge to this is it is not included in the 2018 facilities master plan. Doing a new construction on that site of this type wasn't something that was factored into the 2018 master plan. It's really an idea that evolved more as we went back to revisit the idea of health and counseling being co-located but not in the rack. There is another longer term solution. So if I go back, the SDSC trailers going away in this new University Health Center could be looked at as a shorter term solution. Could happen a little bit sooner. But I think the thinking is in the facilities master plan, there's a new student services building. You can see it up there. There's a Commons Edition, and kind of connected with a bridge to the Commons Edition was the new student services building. I think the overwhelming thought is that is still the right place to put them eventually. The trouble is it will be a long period of time before we ever get the capital funding from the state to build the student services building. There you're talking about a 100,000 square foot building that accommodates way more than University Health Services and accommodates a whole bunch of student services within that building. That would be a great location for all those things to be co-located in one location, close to commuters, close to residential. Facilities, again, built specifically for them, but the fact is that this solution would have such a long timeline before it actually happens that we think the single-story building like this would be a more realistic goal short-term. And then when we get down the road to building the new student services building, University Health Services and Counseling Center could be factored into the design and planning for that building. And once it's built and they move out of this building, this gets repurposed for some other function at that time. So. That's what I came to present. I'm happy to hear any comments, concerns, questions.
Start with questions. Sure.
So what's supposed to happen with the interface center?
Right now, it would go into the new facility as well. So the 24,000 square feet kind of takes into account everybody that's currently in the trailers. If this were to move forward, there's a programming phase. The programming phase is where you really dig into every bit of space needed by every organization that's going to go in there. And so that conversation would be revisited with the folks currently in the SDSC trailers. How many or all of them will go in this building? Right now, the thought is this building is sized appropriately for all of them to go in there. But that's a conversation that would obviously be looked at more closely during programming to make sure that that's the right place to put them on the campus, that where they should be. The current thought is the building can house everybody that's currently in the trailers, as well as bringing University Health Services across the street too.
Other question?
Yes.
Sure. So what's the short-term building?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were to build the longer-term building,
yeah,
after having had built the short-term building, why is it not possible to just have, in like reusing that building, just using it solely for either counseling services or interfaith center?
The smaller building?
Yeah.
Because the idea is to keep University Health Services and counseling co-located in the same spaces. So if we were going to plan to put them in this longer-term solution in that building, we would plan to locate them both over there at the same time when the construction was done.
The only thing that I'm thinking is like counseling center, like where the counseling center is now, and what it looks like shows students the importance of mental health, and that it's not that important because it's in a temporary structure.
It's not a temporary structure. That's a full-blown actual structure.
But the way that
Or are
we
you
see
talking
it
the
is
SDSC?
the trailers now.
Uh-huh.
It's seen as like, okay, they just put up some trailers and was like, here, go talk to your problems out right here. Versus it being in like a regular full-blown building.
Mm-hmm.
Like even though UHS is in a smaller space, it's in a real building.
Right.
So an interfaith center, which is used by so many other groups and for so many things, it's in a mobile structure. That's what we see as a mobile structure, not something that's semi-permanent or permanent. So with the actual structure and hoping that more and more students will use that, because college is a stressful thing and people need to have places to go, and with services that are to help students that especially are in need and those types of programs, to expand that and maybe have its own space and not always constantly being grouped with something, or with this new bigger building, in the long run be able to accommodate an expansion, or are you trying to stuff more things in that building?
Into this one?
That one.
This one's going to be all sorts of new student services. And so the programming for that hasn't even been completed yet. But the idea would be University Health Services and counseling would go in. If you look at the amount of space they need, this is a 100,000 square foot building. Lots of other functions would be able to go into that building. Is that the right place for Interfaith Center to go? I don't know. Right now, the shorter term option of the smaller building would accommodate everybody that's currently in the SDSC trailers, as well as University Health Services. So they'd all have a permanent location in a real building. The future of this one would be done during the programming phase, where they'd look at all those activities on campus that are vying for space in here and determine what the right mix is.
Okay.
Did that answer the question? I don't know if I got it exactly what you were driving at
No, I
there.
feel like you hit points. Yeah.
I hit
Because
points.
it's more, this is more of an abstract goal,
Yeah.
so it's like harder to be like more concrete in the answer, but
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, so just so you know, I mean, everybody, all the way up through the administration, agrees that the SDSC trailers are not the best things to have here. We want to see them go. Me being in facilities, yeah, I don't like trailers. I've never liked trailers. Any place I've been, if we can eliminate trailers for better options, I think that's a good way to go. But agree with you, and that's been pushed by Nancy Young, the Student Affairs also. She is not satisfied with the trailers as a long-term option, and I think everybody agrees with that. It's just where does that align with everything else? Right now, the shortest term fix for that could be this building. So, but you know, there are a few challenges as outlined on the other slide here, where you know we don't have it in the master plan. There isn't currently funding available for it. We'll have to figure out where the funds actually come from for it. And then we'd also have to gain Board of Regents approval. So every project like this we do gets approved by the Board of Regents. And typically, all buildings that are approved are included in the master plan. So that's one factor that's a little bit of a challenge.
What's the timeline looking like for the secondary building, the Student Services Center? That one, because you mentioned like it's a long-term solution, but by long-term, are you talking about like when would that piece be designed to be available, or when would it be built? I mean, I know you have it on exact date, but if you
Yeah,
could talk
okay,
about that.
so the capital funding process is a 5 to 10 year process. And this building isn't even on the list yet. So initially when it gets proposed as our next highest priority building, it could show up on that list, but it would show up out around the 5th year. And that would work its way in year after year. The capital budgeting process is fairly long. And you know, in the master plan, there's several different facilities on there. Residential facility, expansion to the commons, a new academic building. And the reality is none of those things will happen at one time. So quite literally this view, we purposely don't put a timeline on it in the master plan. Because when we plan out, we plan for enrollment growth drives our numbers of what we need. So at a certain point, it drives the numbers for how many more beds we need, which tells us we need a new dormitory at a certain point in our enrollment growth, right? That also drives how much academic space you need, how much more admin type space like the student services building would be, where it's not necessarily classrooms, but services provided for the students and the faculty and staff. And so those numbers are all kind of driven by this process. So even though we know as enrollment growth increases, say we target 20,000 people for enrollment growth, right? So that's going to drive a certain number of new buildings. But the timing of that really depends on how enrollment growth does. If we went through a boom and enrollment growth just went through the roof, we might be able to convince the state to give us funding a little bit quicker. So there's a lot of drivers to when that is. I would say this long-term solution, you're probably talking, 10 to 20 year time frame overall. Could it be faster? Maybe. Could it be 10 to 20 years? Maybe. So, does that help a little bit?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
So when you're talking about that 5 to 10 year funding process,
Yeah.
How does that apply to the short-term building? You said that you're hoping for it to be completed within 3 years.
Okay, so good question. That's a really good question. So the funding process for this longer-term building, that would be the building we strive to ask for state funds for. That's where you get the 5 to 10 year funding process. The smaller building, we would be looking to use our own funds for that. So this would be university funds. We'd have to identify where those funds get pulled from. But the result of that is when we pull funds for that building, something else of equivalent value is not going to happen. So what that is, I can't tell you right now. It could be other renovations that we're going to get scheduled for other functions that might have been incorporated into a different facility. We'll have to go get delayed or pushed out until more funding is available for it. But so with the shorter term option, we wouldn't be asking the state to fund it because quite frankly, we wouldn't get the funds faster than 5 years. We wouldn't gain state support to do it with state money, but we could gain possibly Board of Regents support to fund it with our own money. So it all depends on how receptive they are to us justifying it. But that's the big difference there, is we would be not going through the state process. We'd be using our internal funds and getting the Board of Regents approval to do the building. Yes?
Oh, okay, we have a list. So Jordan, me, Mary. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the way that I'm understanding this right now is that, so the rack was one idea, and I feel like, would you agree that that's like the fastest thing that could be developed, or like the fastest moving thing? Does that make sense? So like, there's the rack, and then there's this like intermediate short-term building as you've been calling it, and then there's a long-term building.
Yeah, when I say short-term, it's not really, don't think of it as intermediate. It's going to be a real building that will be around for probably pushing close to that 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the modular buildings are sturdy buildings. It's not like the trailers. I mean, you're actually talking a full concrete foundation with the building on it and everything. So I don't want to give the impression at all in this group that that's a temporary building. It's going to be a permanent building. It's going to be a fixture here for a real long time. But the rack was one solution, but the rack didn't account for all this stuff either. The rack was only looking at UHS and counseling. There was still no decision on what would happen with the other units within the SDSC. Okay. So Student Judicial Services, Interface Center, there was no plan of where they would relocate. The rack has its own challenges, but one of the things with the rack is the space for UHS and counseling there wasn't really deemed an area that was as appealing for location on campus, possibly. Yeah. We could get UHS and counseling to both fit in the rack. I mean, the square footage numbers were comparable to what we're looking at with the other buildings. So.
But what is exciting about this project happening and then the rack renewal still happening is there's a lot more, a new rack renewal plan for additional recreational facilities for student use, new multi-purpose space for student organizations. So it's not like all the plans with the rack just died.
Correct. Yeah, the rack renovation is still happening, but now instead of spending money to outfit it for medical type of services, some of those spaces are now being outfitted for recreation type activities.
So this is what I was trying to get to, I think. So since UHS and the counseling center, I guess, are like hypothetically aren't moving to the rack now, right? They will be waiting to go into this next building that's going to be built in maybe 3 years or 2021 or so. So they're just going to be in Erickson until that time.
Correct. We have no other place to put them.
Yeah.
I mean, as simple as that. We don't have another spot where we can move them to. And even if we had space to move them there, we couldn't just move them because it would have to be renovated and fit their needs as a medical facility. Okay. So that's the problem you bump up against is even if we had space available somewhere else, you would have to do a renovation and construction to make it work for what their needs are, both the setup and the functionality with sinks and exam rooms and things like that. Yeah, so you're correct. University Health Services would remain where they are in Erickson until this construction was complete. Anyone that's in the SDSC trailers would have to be relocated prior to demolition until this construction was complete, and then all of them would move back in at the end.
Okay. So a lot of the issues on campus are revolving shortage of staff or having long wait times to see people. So with this short-term building, does that give them the ability to expand their services anymore, or would they still be at full capacity?
I actually can't talk to that.
Okay.
I think that's a question that University Health Services or counseling
Okay.
would probably be able to answer better than that. So, yeah.
So what I'm gathering from this is the short-term building that's not really short-term is something that's like been a long time overdue, and it was sort of like fast-tracked because of the RAC renewal. So I'm trying to understand like why, because the initial plan was to take the University Health Services and the Counseling Center to the RAC, but because of I guess like pushback, it's staying in its location. But like why does it need to be renovated, if that makes any sense? Apart from like reasons that Yaz brought up about the trailers being an, I guess like impermanent space that communicates, I don't know, I guess, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're asking me, let me just kind of summarize your question here. You're asking why they can't just stay where they are now?
Yeah, like why can't it just stay how it is?
That was an option. So that wasn't one I presented to you, but so when we made a list of options, we explored fairly extensively a whole bunch of ideas. Could they go into a new dormitory when it gets built? Could it go into this building? And actually that one is a favorable option because it fits well there. Could we leave them where they are? That was an option, but that met extremely strong resistance because once we were directed to explore more thoroughly another solution for them besides the rack, right? So once we were directed to explore more thoroughly other options for that, we listed that as one of the options. And
so I guess like apart from like the trailers, like I guess painting a picture of like unimportance like regarding mental health and like just health in general as being unimportant, what is the solution? What was the solution for moving UHS? Like what were we accomplishing? What are we
co-locating the two services was very much important. And that was pushed very hard with student affairs. They want UHS and counseling to be co-located.
Like in the same building, not in the same area, just in the same.
Correct,
okay.
Same building.
Okay.
They want them co-located in the same facility.
Okay.
And that's the route we were going on with the RAC renovation, was that accomplished that goal of getting them co-located. It didn't, moving them to the RAC didn't necessarily answer the question about what we do with the others in the trailers. But that question would have followed very closely after that. You know, so if we were still proceeding down the road of UHS and counseling going in the RAC, we would be exploring options for what do we do with the other tenants in those trailers, and what's the timeline for that? Because, you know, there are groups that you wouldn't just build a building just for that small group. They would have to be located someplace, and that would have to be worked out as well. Yes.
So would we be designing this long-term building for counseling and UHS services, and then they just end up moving out? And, well, I guess it'd be there for 10 to 20 years. So.
Yeah. So I know it's a difficult.
It's like,
yeah.
Would that space be able to accommodate, or what would be an example of how that space would be repurposed, I guess?
Well, the space, so you're talking the first building, the 24,000 square foot building,
Correct.
when UHS and counseling, if they were to relocate into this longer term solution,
Correct.
how would that be reutilized?
Yeah.
With the space planning committee would evaluate that and figure out. We get requests for space and for moving organizations throughout the campus all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a whole planning committee that sits down and kind of knuckles through what the mechanics are for that. Also, you can imagine, so we just updated our master plan. Before this building is constructed, we will be doing another master plan update, because this building won't be approved, funded, and actually completed before we do the next master plan update. So questions about what would go in that building, and then what would be our follow-on plan with everyone that's vacating this building or, you know, coming out of the smaller building. We would have to work through some of that with the new master plan update, which.
How often do you update the master plan?
So this one was about a 9 or 10 year time period between the updates. Typically, It's a little closer to 5 years.
Okay.
But some of that is driven a little bit by the system, because if you look at all the different schools in the system, there was very engaged when their master plans were completed last. And the system mandated that everybody update theirs in 2018 to kind of bring them all up to, current, their current ideas of what they're going to do. And we actually just briefed ours in March, and all the other campuses were briefing kind of around that same time period. Within a couple months, they all briefed their master plans. So I would expect between 5 and 10 years we'll be doing another update on the master plan in its entirety.
So how can we best help you? Do you want to know if we're in favor of a smaller building, or do you just want me to just like your thoughts?
I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, anything you think of after this, feel free to shoot Julianne or myself an email with any follow-up questions or thoughts about it. If there's someone that doesn't feel comfortable saying it right now, but after I leave they say they're really opposed to it and this is why, feel free to shoot that to us. Let us know what you're thinking about it. Because the whole purpose of giving the brief is so you can get a glimpse of the different options that we are looking at and give us some feedback so we can take that back up to the other senior leaders that are involved in this process. Yeah, I don't know who was first.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So apart from like presenting to, I guess, student government groups like this, what other ways are you guys looking to, I guess, like brief the student body about the happenings in facilities management?
The happenings for what type of stuff?
Just things that directly affect students.
Okay, so we did a facilities master plan brief that was open to the whole campus, and actually there were several iterations of that. I think Julianne probably also came in and briefed in this forum also. We also had an open campus-wide brief for the master plan. We do 1 to 2 construction updates every year. And those are open to the whole campus community as well, and those are advertised out ahead of time. And usually we get in one of the lecture halls and we bring up our construction map. It shows you what construction is happening now and what's coming down the road the next couple of years with that. So.
And are these like, I guess like forums, or are these like do you guys look for surveys or feedback, or is it just talk about how we feel? Are you guys looking for data?
We aren't looking for data there. We're presenting to the campus community so they know what is happening on campus. Because a lot of these things that we present, like when we do our construction forum and kind of let everyone know what's happening with construction, it isn't just the new buildings that are state funded, like the event center or the event center we actually funded, but it isn't the new big construction. We do talk about those, but we also talk about a lot of the repair projects we have going on. For example, physics roof that's happening now, road repairs we got coming up, things like that, just so you have a better sense of it. Also on our website, there's a construction map that's updated every time a new project starts. So you can always click on the construction map, and there's little call-out boxes that will tell you what's happening in those areas where you see the numbers. That tells you what project we're working on there.
Yeah, did you have a question?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
And then you kind of answered some things when you said that. I think my biggest thing was like, no matter what direction you guys choose to take to update these spaces, is ensuring students that the tenants of the trailers won't be overlooked. Specifically counseling services, which is something that's really important to me. And even the shortest solution is 3 years out, if it happens at all. Just what are things as facility services, like what are you guys doing to ensure that these places are being kept to their fullest potential, or like at 100% while it's being used, because people are already like feeling a certain way because of where it's housed already,
Right.
and just not steering students away from using these services because it doesn't look as if this is important as the event center.
So I understand your perception, but I can give you one example of what we're doing to try to maintain those trailers. I spent $70,000 last year alone, last summer, doing work on those trailers. So we re-skirted all the way around the trailers. I rebuilt the stairs on As you look at the left-hand side, there was a staircase around the side that was falling apart. We rebuilt those. We repaired the deck on the front, and we rebuilt the ramp on the side of the building and the rails for the access into the side of the building on the right-hand side. So we put a significant amount of work into it. I already know this summer there's probably going to be more that gets done to the trailer. They're in constant need. I mean, the bottom line is, I mean, they aren't falling apart, but they are a maintenance challenge in the fact that they're older, and so we have to keep infusing more money into it with projects to try to keep it in a usable condition so it doesn't continue to degrade. So I hope that helps a little bit, but I don't have the projects identified for this year yet, but I already know there's going to be projects that happen at the building this year, because pretty much every year we're identifying something there that we need to either maintain, replace, or repair.
Cool. Any other final comments or questions? Okay. Then what's an email that people can reach you at?
CARLEN@umbc.edu.
Carla.
Carly. Or my last name, or my first name makes it easy.
Cool.
Except then people call me on the phone and ask for Carlin.
Yeah.
All right, no other questions then?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for your time, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
What was your name again?
Len Karen?
Len Karen?
Yep, Lenncaron.
Oh, thank you.
Not Carla.
Not Carlin. All right.
Oh my God.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Senate, do we need a break because we're in it for a long haul? All right, can we take 10 minutes to be back? We have a confirmation at 6:25. So.
I'm supposed to put all that.
Why don't we see like?
You said what time? What time is
Because
that?
I asked you both directly said yes.
Bye.
Sorry.
Have a good night. Thanks.
If everybody was fine, I would have done like SGAs, but I don't know if people ate and like they can't leave during confirmations to get food, so I don't want to start people out.
What is the service building? That's common.
You guys by 6:25. It's like common.
Take it off.
What does that mean? You don't know how? Like a baked potato? Like I have you
I
ever
like
baked
stuff presentation. Also,
It was interesting. It's interesting.
yeah.
I always mash it up and then.
What? The
This
building
lady
renders
was
are nice.
Oh, you
Yeah,
got
they
a little
do.
sour cream?
Like he came in and presented to the steering committee about
Like, probably, like,
different types of bathrooms and like the ISL.
ILSB?
ILSB.
Oh, the gender neutral
IFBL.
The gender neutral ones?
Yeah, like gender inclusive, because like all they all have some gender bathrooms, right? But also like gender inclusive and like single stall ones.
Hmm.
And I was like, how do you think people are gonna react to that? And he's like, it'll be fine. I was like, are you sure? It was good stuff though. This was steering committee.
They're putting the stuff in, they're putting that in the rack now as well.
It's good.
You know how to eat sometimes.
Where's that? It's a low. Where's this one? What's that? I was doing this wrong.
I was going to do a potato.
No, you're fine.
That was
I like mix it up so the sour cream gets in the potato. And then, when I mix it, it looks like a hot mess.
No, I took an 800 water until I was like 2 extra. Which I'm kind of okay with. Given the I guess I really need
So
to
hard.
break this. I have to figure it out. You can hit this letter.
I think it's too early.
Oh, when can I have to see that?
That blurry screen makes it sleepy. Like,
Really?
Like,
I know some people were like, we're gonna be here for a while, and I'm like, sorry, y'all. What do you want me to tell you? I mean, hopefully we can get through faster than that, but like, I don't want to like cut out our last like body.
What is the activity?
Yeah, you're not enough. It's just like it's affirmation activity. I don't want to like spoil it because everybody else will know.
Why aren't the FIs in
Because like it kind of ruins it because it is a very like heartwarming thing to do.
Because there was.
Help the conversations go faster.
What is an FI? Non-existent.
I'm gonna stop that. Don't worry about it. I got you.
Oh, that's a lot of sauce. That is a lot of sauce.
Saucy.
I was hoping you were talking to Brenda because I was going to say sauce.
No, I saw like the sauce like ooze out of your sandwich and I was like,
I thought the
saucy.
stress thing was today, so 11 o'clock I went to this work, so it's like,
That's the most kind thing I do. Hey, Rachel,
Yeah,
just come down.
it is.
Just reasonable?
I have work.
We're either at 1 to 3.
Nice. Yeah.
they ended up like,
Announcements?
Are there like designated, I don't know, like volunteer positions for the people showing up whenever they can for?
Yeah, so there's a sign-up genius that I'll post later in the group chat. Oh, in the group chat. On Slack. So you
Like
can sign
tonight?
up for
Oh,
it.
okay.
Yeah, you can sign up for it. There's like different slots. You can
Is it based on the same people who filled out the Google sheet about like
That's
sustainability?
Yeah, you can fill out that sheet. Yeah, if you tell them, then you sign up.
Oh, I didn't know there was a sign up sheet.
I don't know if that's the reason.
Hey, what?
I have so many notes for all of this.
Yep.
A Google sheet and a sign up sheet. You really did that.
Yeah.
And you wonder why people didn't
Yeah, I
fill out the others.
It was just too much work. They were like, archive.
I forgot about the Google sheets until Brenda like bumped it and was like, hey, remember this is the thing. I was like, oh, you're right.
So yeah, I'll post that tonight. You know, it's kind of like last minute, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
All SGA officers are illiterate. His live stream's on. I said what I said. They can hear me. Post it on Twitter. You won't. Tag Dr. Young in it.
Hi, welcome to the SGA.
Is your legislation done?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Because it skipped like 40 on.
Do you really have both your iPad and your MacBook Pro on it? And your Apple Watch, Apple Trash?
No.
Those
I have an app. I could not be less
No.
effective.
No.
I'm loving it.
Y'all, I was sick and Brandon came all the way out from his house and picked me up to take me to
Oh,
No, we went to.
Mine.
What?
Yeah,
What happened?
there was a grease fire in Brett.
It's like a building burning down.
I don't know, but like there's like,
This makes you
according to UMBC news for smoke-free teams,
Oh, no.
Right, the most
There are-
reputable news.
there are
source.
5 fucking ladders over my hillside right
Oh, is
now.
that right?
That's alright.
Can we see them?
Yes,
Probably feel good.
you can smell it.
Oh, Colin, is this how we spell it Monday now?
Oh, you can fix that.
It's gonna be like that, doesn't it?
For
You really call those 500. I'm glad. Yeah.
Literally Brandon. What word do you always spell?
One apartment. Yeah, you put a lot of stars to it. I was like, wow, she really got it. Oh, I saw that picture. Oh, totally. Lots of dairy, you know? Really get your fill. Absolutely.
Wait, actually, it was last.
What do you want to say you're
Oh, yeah.
So these are like not bad.
Those are snag another one, but I can't see it.
I thought that's what you just did. I was concerned.
Is that Lens? No, it's Commons. Campus Lens, sorry, Commons doesn't exist. Look. Oh, yes.
Well, if you want to eat it, let me take that to my Lord.
Well, I think I've got your actual next Friday.
What's your body done?
Just
Inspired.
Same.
This is my new class like I did.
I like how Robin was that. That's how shit works.
yeah.
The last question was I want to finance.
Come
Ah,
on.
I should have-
No.
Just got here.
It's got here. It's like, what is it? It's Monday, yeah.
It's only Monday, yeah.
Yeah.
It's diamond encrusted.
Wow.
That's pretty special to graduate.
Oh my god.
Why is Nicholas joining me?
I'm just trying to stop myself. This photo is so cute.
I want you to think about what you just said.
This is the one on the market
Can I use my refund check?
Really the most important.
Ah,
Yeah.
This photo is so cute.
Right?
I won't tell you later.
You need to like passport.
I mean, they are, but like. I want to be photoshopped into that because I was invited to that gala first.
You
Why
were.
didn't you go? Did you go? Oh, no, I went to China with my friend.
You have that with Max on
You're a pirate.
They were in their
Pirate.
Yeah.
Which China?
The one in, was it Christian?
You said on Saturday. On Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah, Jesse was in there when they had a meeting.
Voluntarily.
How far away is it from?
Who's traveling for
Thanksgiving?
or holidays? Yeah, Thanksgiving.
I'm traveling.
Like 40
I'm traveling.
videos for Chinese.
Is Hanukkah?
It's over. It's over.
We've been Japanese
So
series.
nobody's traveling?
Yes. We've been doing Japanese together.
Oh, that why?
Yes.
I know.
Oh.
You can sit it
I
over
told
there.
you.
I
And I asked you
Oh, no, I
about
think it was
something.
Saturday.
that's right.
Liam, please come back.
It was this weekend. Okay, you're right.
Yes.
Every time you leave, you disappear for like 10 more minutes.
Okay,
Okay,
chasing Jessica now.
okay, please be back.
stressful?
I'm just gonna go find some other. Find Jessica.
Alright, y'all. Way back. So where's Patrick?
Patrick is.
I don't get coffee.
Alright, we're gonna start. Hey, y'all.
Patrick, hurry up.
Alright, so, confirmations. It's time. Hi, Beth. How are you?
Great, how are you?
So, we're gonna go around the room and do confirmation, like, sorry, introductions, not confirmations. So we're just gonna say our name, position, and our pronouns. So, I'm Lily, I'm the speaker at Sunday, and she her pronouns.
Hi, Carly, I'm the SGA treasurer, you shoot your
Hi, I'm Colin, I'm the.
Kaden Martinez, John, SGA advisor, and she her pronouns.
I'm Britta, the vice president, and she was.
Hi, I'm Rashawn, first year master.
Hi, I'm a boy, first year ambassador, she.
senator. She, her pronouns. I'm Robbie Palmer. I'm the secretary, I do she, her pronouns.
Yeah, I'm Jordan, I'm a senator, I used to be in
Maybe Kim, Senator.
Reese, FYI, Ethan.
Jerry. Saturday.
Fine, Patrick, I'm a senator.
Maxwell Mason, nothing so far. Medium pronouns. I'm hi.
Buchanan, Finance Board Representative, Ethan.
I'm Jessica, election board chair. Oh, she's there.
Brandon, this is for science.
Oh, I'm Yasmin. I'm a senator, she, her.
Did we miss that? Okay, cool. So, you'll have 3 minutes to just like introduce yourself. There'll be a timer on, so whenever you hear it go off, just wrap up. And just feel free to tell us about yourself, which made you interested in the position, and any information you think we should know.
Hello, my name is Maxwell Mason. I'm a sophomore physics major. I'm thinking of changing to MECI just because I would really like application of things. I'm an RA here at Harbor Hall. I'm pretty research assistant with atmospheric physics. I'm the son of 2 immigrants, one from Malaysia, one from Eastern Canada. I am an extreme extrovert. I really like interacting with people. I get a lot of satisfaction when I meet new people, establish a connection, get them to join different things, find out about their lives. I really like becoming involved on campus. I am with the Res Life. That's one way that I was able to get more involved. I want to get more involved with SGA because I want to make a difference on campus. I think that's like the underlying reason why I'm here in the field today.
All right, so we're gonna go into a 5-minute period of questions. Who has questions?
Why don't you just business casual?
So what interests you particularly about the election board position?
Well, first and foremost, I want to get other people involved on campus. I definitely want more people to recognize that they have a voice in what happens on campus, and I think elections are a big part of that. I'd love to help out in improving voter turnout, so that way the student voice can be heard more loud and clear.
Other questions?
Do you have any plans to increase voter turnout based on what we've seen in past elections? Like it hasn't been too great. So do you have any idea of what you can do about that?
Yeah. Personally, for us, I'm an RA, so I have different things at my disposal to get residents involved. I obviously won't be able to promote them voting for certain people, but I can have programs for people to come out and vote, or just ask people to come out and vote, things like that. I think this cohort of RAs, the one from this year, were really intermingled. We always go out and do things together, and not just in my building, across all of the communities. I have friends in every community, and so I think that would be a good place to network coming out to vote. Aside from, or kind of building off of that, flyers and advertisements. So in Harbor Hall, my coworkers have recently appraised me for my ability to make flyers and have good turnouts for my programs. My programs have been consistently getting 30 to 40 plus people, and that's impressive in an upperclassmen dorm because everyone just kind of does their own thing. I was leading Harbor Hall in the Sky Factor survey, and I was able to get my room pack done in a very quick amount of time. I'm actually going to be giving a little talk program thing over winter training to show other RAs how they can make better flyers. So just things like that, I think, can really help with voter turnout.
Sorry. You are an RA, and are you going to be an RA going into next semester as well? I assume. I know that's a large compliment. How do you see being able to balance that with being an election board member?
Being an RA is definitely a time commitment, but it's a flexible one, I would say, because I'm able to schedule my meetings with my residents. I won't be able to really control when I'm on duty or not, but that's one day out of the week, so that isn't too big of a thing. And my RA programs will be, once per month, twice per month, and those things might include things related to e-board. So I don't think it'll hinder my ability to work.
Any final questions?
How familiar are you, or how would you say you deal with, I guess, the political tenseness that comes with elections? Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, your question is how do I deal with things that might come with elections?
Yeah.
Well, I think in a broader sense, staying unbiased is something that comes with being an RA. During the 2 weeks of training, they really drill into your head how to mediate things and how to be an unbiased opinion, how to be open to everyone. So with things like elections, I honestly don't feel like I myself am affected by the individual, and it seems that I'm able to talk to anyone regardless of any sort of affiliation, and I think that will help ease any sort of tension.
Cool. Alright, so we're going to go into a period of discussion, which is another 5 minutes. This is limited to senators only, and I'm going to start the timer. Yeah.
I think that works. I'm impressed with the fact that he's an RA because I feel like that takes a lot of people skills, and it sounds like he does it efficiently. Off of Patrick's part, though, the workload that comes with being an RA and the commitment to being on the election board is one that I'm kind of leery of. Not to make a decision for him, but like just thinking of the amount of work that goes into each.
Jared and Mary.
So when it comes to Max's responsibility, I think I can vouch for him because when I was the president of Susquehanna Community Council, I had Max as one of my floor reps, and he was very proactive about the position. He came to just about all of our meetings. He came to all of our events. He fulfilled all his responsibilities above and beyond. So I know he's a very busy guy, but I mean, even for something as small as community council floor rep, he was still very committed.
Yeah, and also to speak to that, I feel like that, because I know like Max is my friend. I would say that his roles or like jobs are very dependent on his like day-to-day interactions. So I feel like you good, Candace? Okay. I feel like he'd do a good job on being an election board member, given the fact that just anything that he does is like deeply tied to the way he acts and on campus. That sounds weird, but yeah. And I definitely feel like voter turnout is something that he'd be a good asset for, because he talks to mad people.
Patrick.
Yeah, my first point here, I'd like to say that I plan on voting yes for this. But one thing I do want to bring up, just that my conscience is clear on this issue. Over the past like 3 weeks, I've sort of noticing a trend among the candidates for this. And I mean this is no disrespect, but it seems like a lot of like friends of the election board chair are being brought forward. I think that they are good candidates, and like I said, I will be voting yes. But I do worry about that moving forward and in the future with different election board chairs. I think that it's important we remember that like there should be a very broad diversity of thought on the board. And again, not saying that there isn't now. I think that's something that needs to be brought up, so that at least for myself and my conscience, that thought has been brought up to the body as well.
Yeah, I think Max brings a different perspective, but I also think having involved people on the election board is good. It seems like he can handle his responsibilities, and I can really back up his claim that like RA is flexible. Like I was an RA for 2 years while I was a senator, but it's really just like planning on him to make sure that like his programs aren't falling in that week and stuff like that. Other than that, I think his answers about getting voter turnout to be up through like being able to use his job as like a platform is really good, and I am like totally here for that, because there's like community council that does it, but having individual RAs also do it is really helpful. I have Yaz and Lynn.
I just want to pose a question to Senate. Like, how many of you know before everything?
Oh my god.
Oh, okay.
All abstain.
And like, was that like the same for other candidates that we had in front of us before?
Are you raising your hand to answer, or
Yeah.
you were saying yes?
Okay.
Oh, I think Mary wanted to respond.
Yeah, I wanted to respond. I knew some of the candidates before, and I definitely agree with Patrick's point about
Well,
Patrick's point about the majority of the election chair being friends, because I believe like May was nominated by Kai. Kai is friends with May. I think Max is friends with May, and then Jasmine and Jessica are twins. So I feel like it's definitely like it's a little like it's not the best position to be in, but I know them personally, or I know some of them, and I feel like they do a good job of not letting their personal biases get in the way of their jobs.
All right,
Yeah.
extending this conversation by 3 minutes. We have 2 more talking points. One more. Liam also has something to say.
I'll.
Go ahead.
So one, I don't think right now is a really appropriate time to be having this conversation because I think there's a candidate right here, right now. I think this is a conversation when there isn't a candidate right here to have and be thoughtful of. 2, we have a process, which is the nominating committee, for instances where he feels or looks shady that an individual brought forward has existing relationships with a lot of other folks within SGA. That will always happen. We are not as large of an institution as everyone likes to think. Someone in this room is inevitably going to know someone else being brought forward. It's how do we discern from those personal relationships and knowing the character and if they can do the job that they're being brought forward for. But again, I don't know if I necessarily think now is an appropriate time to continue this conversation.
It's not. So Liam, you have last point.
Yeah, so I was going to speak on to his work ethic as an RA. I know that he's been able to distinguish points where he's been friends with people, and I think that also semi-addresses the issue of being friends with a lot of senators here for this conversation today, is that the delineation between him switching, between him as a working RA and him as a friend can switch very quickly, and it's a very sharp switch too. I've definitely seen on points where it's uncomfortable for him because he doesn't want to, because he has to write for a friend or someone like that situation, but he's able to do that. The personal biases that a lot of people worry about when it comes to him, he takes his job very seriously, especially if it is a paid position. In this case, this is. But like, he knows that if people are depending on him to do something, and he's going to get something out of it, he's going to get the job done. So I have, like, as far as the personal connection point, but I feel like from a general standpoint as well, he can be unbiased.
Awesome. Is there a motion?
I move to approve JL 11-1819.
Second.
Would anybody like to register any abstentions for personal bias?
I can register.
Yeah, because you abstained, you're not responsible.
Oh, I already said, I'll abstain it.
Would anybody else? Okay, great. Member Senators for Member Senators opposed? All right, and with that, this motion passes the Senate. I love the snap. Okay, so somebody from Finance Board should have gotten in contact with you about tomorrow, and we wish you well. Thank you for coming. Thank you. This is the time slot she chose. Bye.
How's everyone doing?
Do you want to have that conversation that we just tabled now, or do you guys choose?
I just wanted to say, like, I wasn't trying to start a conversation. I just wanted to know, from my own objective opinion, like, how people, the person I'm sitting for, because as you pointed it out, that, like, it seemed like there was a pattern, everybody doing it, but person biases wasn't the thing specific to this room that I was worried about. I just wanted to make sure I had all the information so I could make my decision.
And to be frank, I mean, like, I feel like this is the only place to discuss this in confirmation. Like, if I have all confidence in this election board. I think that all of them are qualified candidates, and I think we all make sure we ask the right questions, make sure that without our own personal biases getting in the way. But I think that if there's a trend, not like, yes, we do the individuals well, like, yes, we press them well, like, we make sure they're going to be qualified, but if there's a trend of candidates who all seem to be very, very close and know each other, then I do worry about that, because I want to make sure that even if they're all fantastic candidates, I want to make sure there's not going to be any situations where they're all very close. And I think that's something that does need to run up as a trend instead of just specific individual questions. That's just my opinion on that.
Cool. We can continue about that. All right. Hi, Kristen. How are you? Hello. All right. So we're gonna go around the room and do introductions. We're gonna say names, pronouns. Feel free to do the same. I'm Lily. I'm the speaker of the Senate. I use she/her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Carla. I'm the SGA treasurer. I use she/her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm the president of him.
Candace Martinez Brown, SGA advisor, she/her pronouns. The executive vice president, I use she/her pronouns. Oh yeah, Ian, senator, she/her pronouns.
I'm Sean, first ambassador.
I'm going to play she/her.
Marion Walzoga, senator, she/her.
I'm Robin Pablo, secretary.
I'm Jordan. I'm a senator.
Wayne Candy, senator, she/her.
Reese, first year ambassador at UNT. Jared, senator.
Patrick Reed, SGA senator.
I'm Chrissy Chen, she/her.
Scott, for representative. Brandon, speaks for senator.
All right. So you'll have 3 minutes to like give us whatever you want to tell us your name, why you're interested in the position, like what drew you to the election board. So you can start whenever you want.
What was the last name?
You're just gonna like introduce yourself basically. If you're gonna message whatever you want.
Okay. Hi, I'm Chrissy. I'm a senior GES major. I've been at UMBCL for years, and I have been involved in various cultural organizations such as Vietnamese Student Association, Filipino Student Association, African Student Association, and I have also, starting from my freshman year, I've been on the board for a couple clubs, Retrievers for Animal Welfare and Sustainability, and the Yoga and Pilates Club, and currently I'm serving as Secretary of GES Council Majors and stepping up to President next year. So I wanted to join SGA because I know voter turnout, just like nationally and also in schools, is pretty difficult to, just like it's difficult to have young people and students be involved. And since I have a pretty wide network, I think it'll be good for me to use my connections to help SGA.
Thank you. All right, so Senator will now go into a 5-minute period of questioning. So who has questions?
Okay. So what does using your networks look like? What does increasing turnout look like for you being in your position?
Well, I usually like to use social media to kind of like advertise and get the word out for a variety of clubs and networking events that they might need, like fundraisers, things like that, that they need to get the word out for.
So are there any examples of things that you've had to like spread the word out for, and like what did those results look like?
So most recently I worked with like the booth ambassadors, and they were trying to see how mobile ordering would work on campus, with like skipping the lines and using your phone to order food first. So I would tell my friends about it, and like usually I would, like when I know I'm going to be working at something or I know about an event, I try to kind of like blast it on like social media for a few days prior to it, and then send out like a reminder as well.
based on your involvement and like the different cultural clubs that you included, I think we all have a pretty good picture of your transparency. But how would you rate yourself as a transparent candidate for the board member? Like, what would you do in terms of your unbiased opinions about the candidates and stuff like that? How would you rate yourself for your transparency?
I would say I'm pretty transparent, and I try to be unbiased. Like, I work in retail and other like part-time jobs, so like I'm used to having to keep a level of confidentiality.
What's your classes schedule? How are you going to manage election board with that?
Right. So since I'm graduating in May, I only need like 9 more credits to graduate. So like Monday through Thursday, I will have like a half-day schedule, and then Friday I don't have any classes.
Other questions? All right, Mary?
Yeah. Apart from, actually, no. Yeah.
Okay. Last call. Great.
Do you have any experience dealing with holding people accountable to their things as part of that job, going on that non-biased thing is taking on issues of like infraction rules and stuff? How comfortable do you feel with that? Do you have any prior experience?
Not really. I guess like in my friend's situation, but yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with the conversation.
Just in case I missed it, can you one more time explain, not explain, tell us what your commitment is like for next semester, like outside of academics?
It's mostly just my internship, and then I'll be serving as president of GES Com.
All right, any final questions? Okay, so the Senate will enter a 5-minute period of discussion. Discussion is limited to senators only for this first point.
I like that she came in talking about voter turnouts, because that's one of the biggest problems with elections. So the fact that she recognizes that as the biggest issue is appealing to me.
I think also the fact that she's been at UBC for around 4 years, so she's kind of seen a lot of stuff that's happened in the past, which, given the current makeup of our election board, we've got a lot of sophomores on that board, a couple freshmen and 1 junior. It's going to be good to have that full 4-year experience of like, all right, I've been at UBC since like, what, 2015, 2014, I can't count really well. But like being able to see the progression of like presidents that have happened, elections that have happened, I think it's really valuable to that on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think it'd be good to have a senior on the election board for the fact that she's the first. I mean, because like if I was a senior and I didn't do any like SGA things for like predominant amount of years that I was here, like now I'm like, oh bet I'll just go and help because like the numbers are dry for elections. Like I think that shows something because most people just be like, I'm about to be leaving, so why care? So the fact that she wants to help to build something toward the future students and current students that are still going to be here for a good couple of years, I think that's like kudos for that.
So to speak to Jasmine's point, Yasmin, I'm so sorry. I keep doing that. Yasmin, to speak to Yasmin's point about caring, caring despite being a senior. I think that's something that I actually didn't really like take into account because when I asked, like, what are some examples of events that you promoted, I didn't really get the answer that I was looking for. But I also just see you at every event, like your pictures be everywhere, yeah. Like at ASA, sorry, like you model at ASA events with different,
Yeah, I did the culture show.
Yeah, your pictures are everywhere. So it's like you are, yeah.
Like ASA is that.
Student association.
Right.
All right, any other new discussion points with senators? Or is there a motion?
through 10, 28, 29.
Second. Would anybody like to register any abstentions? No? Great. All right, number 7-4. Oh, wait, that number makes sense. Okay. Opposed? None. Not present, 0. All right. That motion passes. So, congrats. Somebody should have been touching the finance board tomorrow. So, thank you for coming in. We wish you well. Uh-huh. Yep. There you go. Alright, so we have one more piece. Hey y'all. We got one more piece of legislation to pass. This is the part that Colin was talking about. So now that the election board is all here, the gang's all here, you then take the pot of money for election board member stipends and you divide it by the number that you have. So, what is that stipend for each person?
$285.
Cool. Alright, so does anybody have any questions? Hi, girl.
Christine.
Everybody should pull 1, 2, 3, 4.
We just Christine's jail 10.
Yeah.
Max is jail 11.
Oh,
They were just out of order.
Can we change, are you in edit?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you change the last whereas clause to say,
This is result.
FY19 SGA budget allocates
2000.
It's 2,000.
It is 2000.
I'm trying to figure out how to word, what would be the
Maybe like
allocate the pot of $2,000
Yeah,
to pay.
for a total of $2,000.
allocates a total of, yeah, so, okay, right there, nope, it allocates.
So a total of.
So allocates a total of, to all election board members.
No.
To eat? No.
No.
To a
To
a portion of 6.
Yeah, to be distributed in equal parts. To be distributed equally among the election board.
I think equal parts, like,
Equal parts.
equal parts is a more, I mean, it doesn't matter.
Cool.
One more minute. Reese brought it up in the last therefore we were that. So just bring one of that.
Ah. Wow, that's why you don't write legislation or anything.
Well.
Okay.
So just to scroll down real quick, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they're just all the amendments. It's literally just fixing the last line.
They all say 285.
They all say 285.
Yep.
And it says subject to the review of the election board chair, since that's who that goes to.
Not subject to the FOC.
No.
Wow. Wait, wow.
Alright, so are there any other changes that we're going to make to this, or can we pass it?
Move to approve GAO 12-18.
Second. Yes. Alright.
Take a minute.
Number 7-4. Alright, opposed? Why can't I type?
Try refreshing.
You try turning it on and off?
Well, we never.
No, I'll just print it. Alright, and so this motion passes the Senate. Gorgeous.
Yay.
Yay, people.
Wow. I love that typing.
Oh! Any questions? No? Great.
Alright.
All the way.
Yes.
Um,
I'm gonna put a timer up in your second.
Yeah, we approved a bunch of courses. There was no new updates on the gym requirement, so this will be quick. I mean, we didn't really talk about much, but we have some fun new education courses coming your way. I think you guys are education majors, so I hope you guys go out for those. Yes.
Wait till the end.
Yeah.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay,
What
yeah.
was the vote?
The vote is the 11th.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that is tomorrow. Wow. Here we go. Yes.
Alright.
So they were just still waiting on the final thing.
Okay.
There's been some talk of what I mentioned before, like the health and wellness, but there's no new like updates on that. So, does anyone else have any questions for me?
Just what did you say before about the education part for education teachers?
So undergraduate council, we just like the whole meeting, we just approve change to courses, new courses like that. So there's just a lot of like we spend the whole meeting approving changes to education courses. Like there's not really anything that pertains to the body. So thank you guys.
Any other questions for Patrick or comments? No? Great. You guys. Okay. Your timer will be ready.
Alright, cool. So I'm on classroom committee. So they finally made a decision that they're going to be renovating lecture hall 3, which is Admin 101. That'll be occurring over the summer, which will include all of the projectors will be replaced, the carpet will be replaced, seating's going to be replaced as well. They're looking to get using Admin 101 as the model for new lecture hall updates. So there'll be accessibility version in the back where we'll have additional screen painting. That way those who are hard of seeing can have that available. They're also working on upgrading the web test rooms once those go live to allow students to be able to remote in. That way you can see what's going on with the projectors right on the screen of your phone. They'll be using the current chairs in 101 to like help repair the chairs in the other lecture halls. So over the summertime, you'll see repairs to other lecture halls being done throughout the year. Some of the chairs get broken because the pieces aren't there, but they'll be coming from Admin 101. They're also looking at, and this is the big one, is to move, since we're moving to a bring your own device policy for the school, and the new buildings coming in, each of the chairs are looking to have electrical outlets on them, which would be both regular power outlets and USB outlets, so that you can charge devices while in class.
That's good.
Most of this renovation would be happening during the summer of 2019. The chances that it might go over depending on how long it takes, most likely will happen. So the lecture hall may be offline during the beginning part of fall 2019. They're going to work on trying to find a location to supplement those classes. But that lecture hall will be online before the end of the calendar year. That's all I have.
Cool. Who has questions for Lynn?
So what are we doing to get this information to comms and Genevieve and whatnot? Like, yeah.
Well, I was kind of hoping they'd be here as was promised, but they're not. So I don't have an answer for you on that. I can take the notes, I can summarize them into a smaller paragraph as a quick blurb. I can email it out to them. That would be great, but that's what I can do.
You can do it. We appreciate it.
Will do.
Any questions? No. Cool. Does everybody feel good on that conversation from earlier? It sounded like it ended. So, are we all on the same page? Bias? It's fine. As long as you abstain when you need to. That's really what this is. Okay, announcements. So, there's an activity that I want to do with y'all because I love you and I'm about to like peace out of here. So, you know, we're like 20 minutes ahead of schedule, so don't hate me. So, yeah. Announcements? Did you have an announcement?
Yes. So the FIs are putting on their first event tomorrow. That's been done. And we still have quite a lot of free spots for people that we need, you know, to help out with the event. So I'm going to put a Sign Up Genius link in the Slack tonight, and we would really appreciate some help. That actually quite a lot. So maybe it's just for an hour or two, anything like that. So you guys can also come from 10 to 3.
Does anyone, I don't know if I definitively heard, is anyone going to Faculty Senate tomorrow?
What time is it?
Same time.
afternoon.
I think it's the same time as the last meeting, which I don't remember. It'll probably, I think it's at 3 in the library. Don't have the word conference room. Brenda and I met with Provost Rouse this morning. Was that this morning? Wow, what a day. So for some number updates, there are 2 students that if the gym requirement was removed prior to fall 2018, they could graduate. So Provost Rouse is working with those 2 individual students to have them walk next Thursday because of the change. So they're working with that. There are 100 students.
So, yeah, I got So, before when the gym requirement was still a requirement, you could use those credits to count towards full-time enrollment. So there are 100 students that are currently enrolled in gym classes for the spring semester that it adds up to 12 credits for them and they can maintain full-time enrollment for financial aid reasons. So because it's not going to be a requirement anymore, those credits wouldn't count and they would drop below that 12. So they're also working with that population as well.
Yeah, so for that population, and only that population, in my understanding, they're going, for a grace period, they're going to allow them to opt in to be a part of the old requirements. So if you're part of that 100 students, you can opt in to take the old requirements, have them count towards your financial aid, or you can, even if you're in that 100 people pool, you can choose not to be a part of the old system, be part of the new system and take another elective 3-credit course that you want to take to count for your financial aid. But regardless, Provost Rouse made it pretty clear that all communication would be very quick on this, like lots of messages by the end of this week.
Cool. Brandon has a quick update.
And Jordan might need your support on this fact check.
Okay.
So we met with UHS on Friday.
Yeah.
On Friday, and just to, I think you asked a question about like motivations for moving, so just you might have everyone to hear. The increase in space is a big thing because they need more waiting rooms, and people are currently sharing office space, like the physicians on call overlap the same desk. And there's cost efficiency with maintaining one like welcome desk, and they're expanding their resources by having like the increased floor space. So I think that'll address a lot of the concerns that you've brought up, specifically with like improving facilities and services with a larger space and a consolidated space also. And some like information, just demographics, is that UHS is available to like everybody, but counseling is only to students. And UHS has like what, 30% more off-campus students?
Non-residential students.
30% more attendance by them, but counseling has a higher percentage of residents.
To bounce off of that, I think Bruce Herman is his name. Yeah, so he coordinates both the counseling center and UHS. So the reason why they want the big push for them to be in the same building also is because not just because of like this like idea that like there's also mental health and like physical health and things like that. Like those things are both important, but also like administrative wise, like a lot of those things that are in both counseling center and UHS can be consolidated into one area since they're run basically under by the same person. So like that's like why there's like a really big push. And kind of consolidating some resources will allow more opportunity to expand more other resources. So like one big thing that they're talking about is like expanding more rooms for people to like go and like be waited on. So like you don't really need necessarily a lot of people, but if you have more rooms, so people be waiting, and then like the doctors or medical attending that person can like go to room to room better. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. Any other announcements?
Yeah, I have one. So I went to the University System of Maryland Student Council meeting yesterday. So some things that the other schools were talking about was kind of like the state of shared governance at all the institutions. So they're kind of like asking about like how like in terms of committees and like the review process, how shared governance has been. So like I guess how has everyone's experience with shared governance been so far this year? Good, bad?
Are you asking?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Or you can ask. We can talk about it later.
No, I'm talking right now.
Oh, I went to Narnia one day. That was partially you, but that was also the communication with the administration that sits on the shared governance committee. I didn't like that too much. I think communication could be better across the board.
Can you like elaborate to that?
Oh, so Narnia. I went to, what was that, facilities management? Over there. No. I've never been there before, so I didn't know where I was going. But I went all the way back there just to be redirected by several different people who didn't know what I was talking about. Just to find out that the meeting wasn't happening at all. So that was hard for me, because I didn't know that was over there. But the meeting didn't happen at all. And there was no like information given to us sitting on that SGC, and I didn't like that. That was very inconvenient.
So like it was like the chairs of that shared governance committee was not relaying information to the students.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say in terms of very least listening wise, an SGC is definitely as a senator, like they take you rather seriously as the student's voice in that situation. Granted, previous weeks I might have invested that, but like I've definitely been in the same classroom committee last week. Like there was questions circulating around just the situation of would they have the power outlets in there, and a lot of them really just went like, well, we have a student here to ask, we have that student voice, and I tend to defer to you a lot more than I feel like most of the universities.
And I would also say that as we like, I feel like shared governance for me, or my experiences with shared governance is like a lot of like you know, speculation. I wouldn't say speculation, but I'm speaking from personal experiences or like the narrow experiences of the people on the like any governing body. And I feel like yes, like our goal is to like ideally get a diverse group of people on the body, but I feel like we need to move toward like a more, I guess, quantitative way of representing the student voice. And I feel like we don't, like, governing bodies don't do a good job of like surveying and like implementing numbers.
Mm-hmm. So
we could actually like better represent the student voice. For example, like student fee advisory committee. Like when things relate to numbers, and relate to like very big issues, I feel like we should be doing quantitative surveying instead of like relying on our opinions and our narrow experiences as members of a governing body. Yeah, but that's just my experience or my opinion.
So based on conversations from Sunday, how do you think that compares to other institutions?
It seems like we have a pretty good shared governance structure here at UMBC. A lot of other schools, they don't even have it. Like I would say, like they don't have it. Or it's like kind of just like a thing that's written in the rules or talked about, but it's not really formalized. UMBC is like kind of like, I would say, compared to the other universities, it's very it's much better. It could be compared to other universities, especially in terms of like fees and stuff, where the students are there sitting. I don't know if it's necessarily being heard. So I think it's really good that at least at UMBC, like we're being represented. But you know, we could always do better.
And again, we're the only, to my knowledge, we're the only institution in the system that actually has a USC. So when there needs to be major decisions that go through shared governance, like at College Park, they call a special session of all of the senates. So every single undergrad senate, every staff senator, and every faculty senator are all in one lecture hall at one time, trying to make decisions. Guess how well that goes over. So I, at least from my end, I thought it was I felt pretty good at the end of that meeting.
There was another thing. So they're also like trying to like get like a system-wide like kind of initiative going about mental health. So they were kind of asking about like what specific things towards mental health should people focus on. So some things were like just communicating resources or like allocating resources. So like what things from UMBC is like should like the system focus on like in terms of mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, the most important part of the meeting was the student regent interview day. And the top 3 student regents have been forwarded off to Chancellor Corrett. And UMBC's very own Cameron Walkup is a part of those 3 names that have been forwarded to Chancellor Corrett's office. So he just did it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's not, I mean, are you done, Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about like SGA culture, and like this is something that I was talking about with Brandon, but like we actually do we have time to talk? Or no? Do you guys want to talk about anything, or
How long do you think it'll take? Like,
just like spit out some ideas about like what we can do better, like to better our relationship with the student body, but like tangible ways, not like.
Is this something that you feel like we could like stay after for those that are interested in helping that?
This is just for me, like just so like I have some ideas while we're here.
That's not bad.
Let's vote.
Yeah. Yes or no?
Okay, should I just say what I'm talking about, and then we could like decide?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was talking about like how we can like I guess better broadcast the SGA office, so that people like want to come in and just like be there and like you know, since like everyone's a member of SGA, so like have that I guess like translate in our office. Like how do you? What I'm asking is like, what are some ways that we can do that? Because I feel like as of right now, we don't have that. Yeah.
Okay, I do want to put the Senate if this is a conversation we want to have after or now. So, yes, now, no, after. Raise your hand for yes.
I have a question. You mean SGA to students or SGA like internally?
SGA to students.
Oh.
Okay, raise your hand if you want to have this conversation now or do you want to move on?
I feel like there's a conversation for communications, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I feel like we've discussed in the past, right? This is like a Senate conversation. I just like correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's why there were issues at the beginning of this semester. Like we thought that was our job, and it's just
I think your job can be to check on the communications department and have conversations with them. That's within your role. And that can look like having conversations outside of this meeting, or you all have the authority to call people within the communications department to come to a Senate meeting and have a hearing, just like, life.
Okay. Cool. So, should we still vote, or is the collective we're moving on?
Moving on.
Cool. I don't want anybody to feel like they're neglected, but we will have this conversation. Okay, so there's an activity I want to do before we do speaker elections to kind of like lighten this room because y'all seem dead, if I'm being completely honest. So everybody stand up. Okay, so this activity is going to be, I'm going to time it so it doesn't take a long time, but for time's sake, I have this specifically designated for Senate members, to do Senate members, just because we've been together for so long. No. Because even though, so what we're going to do is everybody's going to sit here, one person, one by one. Everybody's going to take a marker and we're going to write affirmations around that person of like things they do well together. We're going to put the senators in these chairs, but the people that have been in these rooms, like Candace and them, you all can still confirm what I'm saying. So, who wants to go first? All right, yeah. Does somebody want to like turn on your fingers? You're going to cry?
No.
Oh. All right, so everybody grab a marker for the energy essence. And again, like you're not writing negative things or like constructive feedback right now. You're literally just writing like affirmations. And we're gonna. This is like rapid fire though, so like I'm gonna give everybody 2 minutes per chair, and then we're gonna let the person like read it. Once you have your marker, you can start writing. Yeah.
Come on.
That's not even a joke.
Alright, 2 minutes is starting. We're trying to like holiday music.
I know, we just get one of them.
I want everybody to participate, right?
Hey, I'd love to, but.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
I wrote something. Yeah, I'm just like, probably should have I'm sure we will.
No way. Is this Christmas? Hold on. No, it is Hanukkah season.
I'm sorry.
Alright, if you've written, move away from the board so people can write. Alright, so Patrick's asked for moving to classical music.
Do jazz. Like, I don't know. What?
Jazz? Yeah.
Give me some. Ooh! Let me look at my Jaleel.
I'm out of jazz.
Whose seat is this? What you know about Jaleel? She lives on there. I applied for the Peace Corps thing.
What is a Peace Corps thing?
I look forward to.
It's okay, I changed something.
There is a Peace Corps thing.
One of the Peace Corps.
That's not.
program.
Okay.
So prepare you to
Like, so what is a prep?
To serve this nation.
What's your
shit?
Alright. Now, guys, you stand up and look and be happy. That's a mood killer.
This one always asked what my.
Boom snap.
That should happen.
There.
Okay.
I exactly.
Oh, thanks, guys.
So we stop this.
Alright, who's going next?
No.
Hi.
Come on down. The price is right.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. No, it's like that the thing on Sesame Street where they'd be like, so this is.
Alright, y'all. And we do it again.
Here we go.
And timer's on.
Somebody say jackhammer Christmas.
What do you think?
No, what are you talking about?
It's not scary.
We're like 3/4 of the So we met today. So we're doing like an Instagram page.
Yeah.
And we're like,
Wow, you guys are creative and stuff. Who's the president? I'm like, yeah, sorry, oh shoot. I couldn't respond.
Oh.
It's not that reaction was inappropriate.
I'll talk.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's not disgusting. I like it.
Right?
When I was
You're really nervous. Alright, y'all, make sure you're ready. I drove. No, you're good. No, I'm saying like, keep moving. Ooh, a Grinch! I did it. I moved it. No, I don't have this one. Oh, you got 10 seconds. Deadline on Collins.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Love you. Which one is Grinch? Alright, it doesn't matter. That's like right, like I don't know what to use. The first one is Vaseline. That's how it's investing. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. The person that wins is nominate the next person. There's one.
I would judge with them.
All right, come up. Do the thing.
I'm gonna even close my eyes.
You can't see behind your head.
It's for the effect.
She got her eyes in back.
It's pretty good. It's like a good mix between
There are too many actors. I just got that cool kid syndrome. Now I take Errol.
What's the
There are classics.
Yes, he's alive. Oh, yeah, yes, he is. Really? I mean, I was probably red.
You're talking about me? Yeah. Accents. What? I didn't know you were from New York. Really? Yeah.
All right, now keep it going.
What am I supposed to like keep the train going? Start talking with a Brooklyn accent?
Yeah. All right, 20 seconds. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Why is it so hard for you to think
Colin Edwards? It's like a challenge.
like, for everything.
All right, timer's up. Because I sound very gentrified.
Looks like this
Dr. Miriam, I was figure at the New York Bronx. And then some Japanese. Oh, aw, ooh. I'll go NYC.
Give me a there you go.
Good look. Okay, elegant. Where did elegant? Hey,
You know.
aww.
it's going from you.
Great question. Very cute. All right, who are you nominating? I'm nominating Reese Kriminsky.
Woo!
Reese!
Yeah, it'll be better.
Down.
Wait, it's
Robbie's like,
are you sure? No, I know.
I said you're one of us.
We would.
No,
All right, start.
Ooh. I'm sorry. Oh, Kaminsky?
Yeah.
Close your eyes.
I feel like a reach.
Stop looking.
Wow, Brenda.
I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
It's a lot.
You heard the instructions.
I thought you were writing smell, and I was like, why? Also, grammatically correct. I was like, where are you going?
Oh, to Chilton. So cute.
Yeah, there's too many black markers.
Oh, dang.
It's faded.
How's it?
No. Oh, you're next.
Who's
going next?
Sounds like a holiday. I just think that Christmas is the day. I think that it goes from 24th to the 26th. It's a 12-minute No, I wasn't saying don't like Christmas music. I was just saying play a variety of songs.
Now I get why people
Steamroller Christmas. That's all I'm saying. I don't know if you ever heard Steamroller.
Oh, I used to, you know, he knows the lyrics, no. His playlist is right? Yes, yeah.
So you do not know anything like that?
I remember the first time they were right then. They played dance. Kai will rap. Kai will rap. My son Kai will rap. He will represent. All right, you're nominated. Who almost killed him off the top?
Yeah, who almost killed him?
Can somebody grab that eraser?
Oh, that was.
Kai yarn right here. You got it.
All right, Jordan, you're going. Did he hear me then?
Yeah,
No, you did not.
Dreams and nightmares.
How do you know that I heard that?
All right. Oh, Jordan, this is power racing, not comedy racing. All right, y'all can go.
Jordan,
Ready?
Yeah.
Are you?
You
You want to play that song?
Y'all ready for this?
Sure.
Wait, who's sitting?
I don't know. You don't have your waves anymore.
Oh, I was going to say, wait, he's still sitting.
Y'all ready for this?
That was kind of funny. That was pretty funny right now.
This is a marching band. Spice it up in here. Diversity is nothing if not here.
Really? The band playing practice?
I know, I thought that. That's what it's
I didn't finish. It wasn't Axel. That's my crazy.
Crazy times like this. Time I spent on some.
No. I still don't know.
Telling you, Kai.
What are we playing?
Crazy times like this. Like that.
Now people are like giving me like people are like giving me recommendations now.
Every graduation.
I
don't think your song is here. I don't think
There
your
are
song
two
is
songs
here.
that are played.
Arms a man game, and I said, good luck.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Oh, Jesus.
Alright, y'all, 8 seconds.
Whatever, there go against some God. I did it with Mariah. What you doing, Mariah?
Shit. Wait, what does that say? Recentrism?
Recentering.
LOL, best that is always given.
Wait.
What?
You give the best.
Wait, 100%. I got sworn.
Obama president.
With that mouth thing. Oh, this is nice. Thanks. Oh, whoa.
Unexpected note.
Doesn't sweat titles.
Thanks.
Yeah,
That's what my title was about.
that's good. Alright,
Exceptional.
Jordan, who's going next?
Brandon.
Oh, yes.
You're.
Here.
Let's talk about this.
How are these different colors?
The dark one's brown dry.
Good boy.
It's still blue.
Good boy.
Alright, y'all, go.
Sorry. A felon.
A rose? I would love it. Like, that is how you should
Why are you saying it?
I'm doing it right here. It's not fun.
He's on a spinner. He's like, it's too fast. he keeps spinning. He's like, I think it's going too fast. He's like, we can slow it down.
Everybody has to offer some advantages. Like, I'll just feel fine.
Will Ferrell
Right.
down to the side.
I agree.
He did not fall.
Wow, I think
That sounds like a 6-0. Or 6-2.
If you like that.
Wait, what?
I was like, bye.
Or 6-5.
All right, 50 seconds.
Yes, he is.
Okay.
He is very
Are
much
you
like
so
that.
that's what we were doing? Yes, we're talking about we're making that like
I can just imagine a white suburban dad like, yes, sir. Every time I said, yes, sir, instead of here.
all right, 20 seconds.
Yes, sir.
He also has exactly what it is.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm just gonna end it. Ready? Stand up.
Kai with his Japanese.
Yes.
Wow.
I don't think they go together.
Happy birthday.
Short practices.
Y'all are so kind.
Thank you. I saw that.
All right, Brandon.
Jared.
Come on, Jared.
No, what?
Yeah, it is. No, I saw
Jared!
You gotta erase faster, Brandon.
Jared, you don't want to run up there?
Brandon,
You said you're up a lot, brother.
I didn't want to erase this stuff, that's why.
He was like reminiscing. All right, y'all. Do it.
That's all like the first 5 seconds.
All right, calm down. You seem pretty cool.
Excuse me.
We should talk. That's the Facebook throwback to the beaches.
I don't have the
Oh my gosh. Why?
Wait, no, just wait.
I'm just kidding. One more. You ready to get there?
Yeah. Plus everybody needs like a
I like the radio.
There's gonna be bluegrass music. What is my video?
What was that?
great one.
Thanks.
Did everybody write something? Yeah.
Kill him. Why don't we get the art life, actually?
Yeah, we got a lot.
You're cool or whatever.
No, you cool or whatever. You cool or whatever. Great
Good guy.
Do
Next time somebody asks that,
Tim's Did y'all ever
I agree.
oh, you guys are mad at my friend.
All right, y'all, ready?
I'm
killing you with an eraser.
I didn't even know like that.
It's a different chip.
Cool like that.
That's all I want.
Oh god, isn't it like was it? Do we find it favored?
I don't like think inexplicit lyrics.
Wait, it definitely is. I remember whenever I tried to buy it, it was in my life.
Welcome to SGA. Oh god.
That's dirty.
What is this? What is this? Karen, I just like to make it known that he tries to
Start the holiday.
What are you trying to think?
Are you trying to think of it?
Is that right?
I mean, only you would know. Alright, you're coming.
Thank you.
Here, you guys have a brother.
Exactly. Like he doesn't know stuff.
Where's your? Solid.
I am a voting member.
Alright, did everybody get the right thing? Thumbs up. Yeah? Alright, good. Yeah, please. Oh, no wait, Robbie's rating. Oh wait,
Oh, no,
no.
I've done.
You know who the farms is?
I can't.
He's a start around his neck. Like, he's like, oh,
Yeah, from
I like how Bob Ross, like when he's like speaking like rap lyrics.
but he was also on royalty.
I guess you have to. This is so exciting. Thank you guys so much. Right?
No, you have to read everything.
Senator Reed. That's what everyone calls.
Lovely eyes. Wow.
Iris Bennett with Lucille.
Hashtag true, hashtag real. I appreciate whoever wrote that. Nice beard. It's wow. Guys, are they? Ooh, who put TK? Oh, yeah.
Somebody messed up.
It's fine. It's fine. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. All of you so much. And now I nominate this
I think.
Robbie, Leon, Lily.
I think
I do. Here.
We still have 2 more to play.
Oh.
3 erasers, go.
Look, it's a race.
This maybe.
Each team has
Alright, go.
Wait, how's ODK? How's the ODK family doing?
Nope. That's what we're not gonna do. Is that. Back to Christmas music.
Wait, can you play Baby It's Cold Outside? That's such a good Christmas song.
No, it's not. That song is problematic. It really is. He's trying to track her.
None of y'all thought it was problematic before this year. I don't want all of you to remember
That's
that.
what happens when you're woke.
I thought-
Learn. Alright, you're in front of the board.
The girl's like the answer is no, and he's like,
Well, he really caught me as a teen.
You said Baby Stay. That's
No, he knows.
She was like, the answer is no. And then she said, what's the texture?
So I thought Sam Smith was all like, oh, stay with me. Oh, that was good. But no, no.
Yeah, but then.
He was asking.
His name.
He wasn't getting people drunk.
Yeah, but then it was what's in this drink? When they pull it outside. Got me there. I'm a little not sure about that one, Chief.
My father will start to Larry.
Scott, I expect you to write something on this board when I go up, and I expect it to be finance course. The next incarnation of Daniel Wang.
Oh my goodness.
I don't believe you can really discern.
I'll take the title away from you.
Oh, look.
Not ever teach you.
I don't know.
Wait.
I just like it. I don't like it. I just like it.
I don't know.
You know, make it hard with you, right? I'm sorry.
That's not like a
You're
I don't like it.
You play Bengals, you missed.
That's okay.
Alright, 10 seconds.
Hi, you go out the window and say, you know,
8, 7, 6, 5,
4, 3, 2, alright.
Oh, then they all right.
Oh.
No, that emoji. That's so funny. No, I'm okay. Really emotional weakness.
Is this
Our body.
Are you
Wait, but trigger fingers.
Drew you a halo.
Oh.
Y'all are too kind.
I'm
Daddy.
Like 1,000.
No.
Text me what
Yeah.
Alright.
No, you
So,
gotta
Liam.
You gotta watch your video.
Yeah,
Okay.
she go last.
Okay. There's Liam. Wait.
William.
Oh, no, I'm not going anymore.
William.
That's not my name. Yeah, that's
Not effective.
yeah, effective for the small one. Just don't have the large one.
Look at me.
Alright,
Yeah. That's my goal right there. You guys.
There's like, there's a series short.
That's fine.
There.
No, how can you say that? No, yes, I mean, yes, but the good he's good is iconic.
I love the
is anybody gonna go see
I think we have the schedule. Like,
Oh, the room.
oh,
It's better than Cumberbatch. Better than Cumberbatch.
Yeah, he makes it sound. Like, the second time I watched
Alright,
it,
40
the first
seconds.
time I was the second time I was like, oh, the light actually crashed more on the street.
Oh, we're not doing this.
oh no, it's
He did the sound
Oh, that's the president by Ice Cube.
all I heard was Tyler, and I was like,
Take Cobain. Oh, I gotta write registered less offender.
Stanley.
alright, y'all.
Yikes, wait, what?
Oh, Flex is back. You scared me.
But the bus was made before
Oh, I don't know,
because
Alright, here.
here.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Right, imagine she snatches it.
One, two,
Yeah.
three.
That's
What? I knew it was gonna happen.
Parliamentarian.
Can't count.
We had different ideas this time, I'm sorry.
oh,
Yeah, I was counting every time they said funds.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, guys.
We activate.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, boy, who's going?
My boy.
Oh, yeah, boy! Yeah, boy!
One boy. Gee, legend.
All right, go. Right, boy, sit.
Wait, what happened to Ariana Grande?
Oh, it's on that lead.
The
The way to bear the lead. Like, what did he make that song for? Because the verse is in the name. Huh? I am agree.
Oh, you guys think?
All I'm just saying is Ariana Grande
Are you proud of the thing that you said tonight? Okay.
Oh shoot, this era. I didn't know. Hey.
I was smothering all day. But I appreciate you because I don't want to be wrong.
Oh, I can't shoot your one.
Okay.
Bring it down back here.
That hurts. You're so cool. It's not working. Ooh.
That's one of my favorite tweets. Jim told me that. That's why I think
I'm coming on like a star. You know when you're walking in that church, is that it? Oh, promotion.
Wait, what's that the whole team?
Yeah.
Just probably get my
So bomb is here.
Real show, Shawty. She a show, Shawty. A legend. Queens.
That's mine.
Keep saying a legend. A legend. Energy. Speed legend.
So we
Thank you so much. Alright,
I don't have a motion for anything.
I'm crying.
Alright, guys. Final
Wow.
This one, Mom, is good.
I know, I'm saying daddy, like I can never pull that off. Alright, go!
Before I
Oh my
start to move this.
She's doing it crazy too. Like everybody.
what's all this album? It's just 5 verses. No, I'm living in Sarah.
Actually, like when I was writing my essay today, my hands start cramping. It hurts so bad. Like, I can't. I don't want to write. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, really, bro. I think writing should be extinct next to it.
Oh
And right.
Rashad. Yes.
Can't stop a man with his
Played this last night.
Right here?
Where is it? I see him over there.
Oh, are you ready?
Oh my god.
You're still there. Make the show.
Where would it go? Look at the delay. That's okay. You're just there, and then it's like.
That's weird.
Like I can be during that.
Oh yeah, SGA big brother.
But where would it show the number of people that are watching?
What's that thing? Is that
One. That's us. That's us on YouTube.
I'll type. Yeah, I think so.
and then we go like,
Once I died over here, I know yourself, man.
my ankles hurt. My ankles hurt. Patrick! Okay, no, it's like this. It's national scary. See why? It's a little Oh, why you look scared?
How old are we dying? Yeah, well, my friend's supposed to come on diet, but I was compared to like custody, so like that's why there's like reason I but I'm not gonna add it yeah, I'm waiting to go right to go like this.
Okay, she gets it. She got it.
I haven't told you.
Okay, I'm trying to ask
Standing here, what? No, like I thought you guys
So you don't know anything? Yes, that last thing? Yo, that's like a, I remember, oh my, just, I thought it was so smart because I would do true false and I would do it like this.
No, you didn't.
Oh,
No!
It's not ever enough time to talk about Lewis.
Oh my god, it's
When's our final?
Oh my god, Chris just called us by Rusty at the station.
Can I walk?
Wait.
No.
Wait.
No, keep going, Carl.
Wait.
Wait. All right, good.
Go.
Head up, shorty.
Don't cry.
Oh,
Give her Christ.
center of your eye.
Like the build-up that you are.
Oh.
I really sure what happened.
I should take it. Oh, wait, here we go.
Yeah, I should have taken a picture.
That was making cry.
I'm cancer as well.
And yet you are canceled.
I am.
So I know.
You and I.
Oh, 1 month.
I thought you said I could.
That was you.
That's not fair.
Watch it, baby.
You can't be a 2000 shot if that's tall. Math, not
I slept all my I slept. Hormones at time.
Alright, so
I swear.
the time has come. Alright, everybody go back to your seats. Let's.
Thank you for being here.
I wouldn't say. I think I'm gonna get annoyed. Oh my wall. I can't really my ass.
Well, yeah, the sunset. I
was pointing.
know what you meant.
Alright, guys,
Alright. Alright. Love y'all, but you got a lot of energy. So I'm gonna say a few words before we go into this, just because like I'm sad, and I'll say we're very fast accountable. But even though I know like it's been kind of rocky, it was like a privilege and an honor to serve as a speaker, both for those of you that were here last semester and for those of you that are having on next semester. But I really do love y'all. Like when I say that, I mean it, and I'm definitely sad for y'all, but I know that like it's what I need to do for my health, and I need to like prioritize myself in this round. So I don't want to cry right now. Maybe I'll cry later. But with that, I just want you all to know like you all are very special to me, like individually, not just like as a group. But that like I look forward to coming in here every Monday and like hearing about your lives and seeing y'all. So don't let that stop. Keep that energy. All right. Okay.
Someone pass it down.
We're not doing that.
We're physically passing.
Hello.
Hello.
So I'm just going to go over what elections are going to look like real quick, and then if you have any questions, you can ask me. Okay. So I'm going to open the floor for nominations for speaker. You can nominate yourself or someone else to be a candidate, and then if you nominate someone else, that person has to accept the nomination. And then you can reopen nominations at any time with a motion, and then that has to pass by majority vote. That can happen. So once we have our candidates, we're going to send them out of the room one at a time, and you'll get a chance to bring them in and ask them questions and have them answer. And then we'll send everyone out of the room. We'll have kind of an overall discussion of the candidates, and that discussion is going to be under executive session. So only senators and ex-officio members can leave the room.
And there are no minutes during.
No minutes, no live stream. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And then we will vote by secret ballot.
Yeah.
Any questions? Any concerns? No? Okay, floor is open for nominations.
The last one's still up.
The election is still on.
It just goes on for the second session.
I'd like to nominate Chair Richard. Sorry.
I will accept.
I would like to nominate Liam.
I'll accept.
I'd like to nominate Brandon Wood. That's
Anyone else? No? Okay. So Jared is going to stay behind, and then Brandon can head up.
So this part can actually be moved into executive session
Okay.
if the Senate wants it to, for the sake of it not being on the live stream or in the minutes.
Do you want that?
I moved to enter executive session.
There needs to be a majority for those. So technically you two can still be.
I'll second the motion.
It's in second, so now there needs to be a vote.
What is
So,
executive session?
So
To move to executive session.
So hold on, here's the question. You got it? You're good?
you know, from here. Okay, so all in favor of executive session? Okay.
So can we pause the live stream?
So I'm just gonna stop. I don't know how to pause it.
Yeah, I can just stop it.
Destroy it.